I forgot to pick a favorite quote. Hello.
Are we live?
We're live.
Oh, yeah.
I'll figure it out. I had many quotes.
Yeah, just think of one off the top of your head.
Yeah. And we almost always pick the same quotes. So I feel like
multiple quotes you can take one.
Okay, we'll see. I'll pick my favorite from yours. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, it's Sunday. It's kind of starting to warm up. You did a lot of yard work yesterday. I did a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, this coming week is Valentine's Day.
Yes, it is. I'm also gone for a little bit. Am I gone on Valentine's? No, I'll be back for Valentine's
Day.
Friday,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a busy week for me. I have lots of meetings and things.
Yeah.
Things to do.
Same. It's grading. Busy.
Grading deadlines. Yeah.
But yeah, it should be. Yeah, it'll be a little weird week. But this past week was pretty fun. We did a lot of dragon hunting.
Oh my god, so many dragons.
In Wizards Unite, yeah.
Played
with a lot of friends. Walked a lot.
Oh yeah, I should check my steps and see
how far. Yeah, you probably burned some calories for sure. Yeah. So hopefully a lot of people were having fun with all that.
Yeah.
I know I did. I mean, it's always fun to get another dragon involved. I was kind of hoping with the Triwizard Tournament theme, they might introduce a couple more dragons, but maybe in the future. My
guess is that this was a last minute thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
Yep.
Plus, it was for specifically Harry Potter Book Night, which was on the 6th of February. And the theme happened to be Triwizard Tournament, so that's why they went with that theme.
Maybe when they finally got the Adventure Sync going, they were like, okay, we'll do the eggs because they're 1K port keys and have people enjoy it that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, what I'm saying is I'm sure it's planned, but I think that if they were going to do their own Triwizard thing, they would have something
make a bigger
more
thing.
Extensive.
Yeah, I could see it. A brilliant event or something.
Yeah. Well, because people have already talked about the dragons we have in game aren't all the dragons that we see in the Triwizard Tournament.
Right.
So I'm sure that once that happens and they focus on that as an event in Wizards Unite, that they'll introduce more. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
What else do you have going on? Anything to report?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm all over the place.
Yeah. We've had some good conversations, some good breakfasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to get into it then?
I'm ready.
We'll see where it takes us.
We'll see where we go.
Okay. Juan's ready. Turn to page 42 at Flourish and Blotts. Today's lesson is called Subtle Clues. The chapter begins with Harry loving his time at the Burrow, experiencing life in a loving wizarding family. His time there is capped by a trip to Diagon Alley via the Floo Network. They are all going to buy their school supplies for a new year at Hogwarts. Harry botches his first use of Floo powder and winds up in Knockturn Alley at Borgin Burkes. He hides from Draco Malfoy and his father Lucius, who is trying to unload some poisons. Eventually, the Malfoys leave, and Harry escapes the shop unseen, only to be cornered by a peculiar witch. Harry is saved from the situation by Hagrid, who happened to also be in Knockturn Alley. Hagrid leads Harry back to Diagon Alley, where they meet up with Hermione, her parents, and eventually all of the Weasleys. After a trip to Gringotts, Mr. Weasley insists on buying Hermione's muggle parents a drink, and the kids split off. Harry, Ron, and Hermione enjoy an hour reunited and surrounded by awesome wizarding shops. Eventually, they make their way into a crowded Flourish and Blotts for a book signing with Gilderoy Lockhart, a famous and handsome wizard who has written many of the books on their school shopping list. There he is, the man himself. Lockhart notices Harry and pulls him to the front, where he announces that he will be their defense against the dark arts professor. As Harry steps down, Malfoy confronts him, and the situation escalates until Lucius Malfoy and Mr. Weasley come to blows. After the scuffle, they prepare to take the Floo Network back to the Burrow.
Dun dun dun.
Da, da, da.
Yeah, I like your title, Subtle Clues, because so something that I wanted to comment on is how there's all these little details in this chapter.
Yeah.
That kind of tie back to things that we've already seen and also connect to things that we'll see in the future. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I picked this title because this chapter to me is again, but for different reasons, masterful chapter by J.K. Rowling. Like the payoffs that we see years from now, books from now, it's really astounding. It's all minor stuff, right? The one that's coming to my mind right in the moment is Percy. Like, I think it's Fred or Ron maybe says like, yeah, he's got it all figured out. He wants to be Minister of Magic.
I wrote that quote down.
Right. And it just is fun to see how well J.K. Rowling can develop a secondary character like Percy. Percy has a distinctly different personality than the rest of the Weasleys. He is that type of person. He does follow that path, but it takes him in unforeseen places right now. But it pays off in such a way, like it's where he winds up. Percy is actually pretty reasonable, I feel like, from what we know about him. Like the way he treats people, how he acts, what he wants out of life, and like the steps that take him where he goes are reasonable to me.
Yeah, so I jokingly wrote in my notes about that, the Minister of Magic quote, is that conspiracy theory, Percy's behind the calamity because he's jealous of Hermione because she's Minister of Magic.
I like it. Percy.
That's it. Yeah, Percy, well, because like we saw like little glimpses earlier in the chapter on the Burrow with Percy being like all secretive and whatever. And we also in that chapter got a little glimpse of Molly Weasley's perspective on Gilderoy Lockhart and how the kids like tease her. They're like, oh, she fancies him, all this stuff. And then it comes back in this chapter where sorry,
Winston is going insane.
This puppy is jumping all over the place. He's having
going
his own party.
He is. He's in his zone.
At least he's playing with his toy.
Oh, he has a toy in here?
He has a
oh,
toy.
Boy.
He's just running around.
Oh, my gosh.
Whoops. But yeah, in this chapter, we get letters from Hogwarts, and then we get this book list, and Harry's looking at his book list, and it's like Standard Book of Spells, Book 2, which Standard Book of Spells is a foundable in Wizards Unite, and one that is divided into 7 books. It corresponds to the 7 years. That also set me down a different rabbit hole, but outside of this book context. And then we have Fred or George, somebody is like, commenting on all the Lockhart books that they have to get.
Right.
And they make a comment of like, oh, it must be the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Must be like a witch who fancies him.
Right.
And like, so like he comes back up again establishing this sort of like who he is and how people respond to him possibly. And then we
there was a mention of him in the previous chapter. Did you say that?
Yeah, with Molly.
Right. Right.
Well, in the Burrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Lockhart is going to be someone we examine repeatedly. He's a very interesting archetype to me. Like, he's ambitious, he's charismatic, he's conniving.
Yeah.
Do we ever find out what house he's in?
We don't know much about him at this point, so
I wonder what house
we
he
can
was
talk about
in.
him
Does
more
it
extensively.
say on the card?
No, we can talk about him more extensively later.
Yeah,
because that's not in my research, Jeff. Stop bringing
hit
things
me with
up.
your research. What do you have? What do you have? No.
Well, okay. Just some details before we get into there. So like Arthur also is developed again, like more as a character, being obsessed with Muggle artifacts and being like upset. Well, so so part of the traveling by Floo powder, and Harry's never done it before, and they're like, how did you get to platform 9 3/4? And
then it comes back at the end when Mr. Weasley wants to ask the Hermione's parents about
the bus stations
buses.
and the postal
but
service.
It's actually like exactly the analog to the Floo Network, I feel like, is the bus. Like you get off at your stop, because they even say that, like, make sure you get off like at your fireplace, not the one after, the one before, you know. It's kind of funny. I don't know.
But the quote in there is Arthur's like, "Oh, were there escapadors?" is what he says. He's talking about escalators.
Yeah.
It's like really cute. And then we get to, so like Harry does that and is like sneezing as he's saying Diagon Alley, gets, thrown into Knockturn Alley. We don't know that at the time, or he's just kind of like confused. And we have Lucius. I wrote Barf. My favorite character.
Yeah.
No. And then we get a little of like the maybe socio-political climate of this current day, because he's like commenting on this new Muggle Protection Act. And so that seems to be why he is at Borgin Burkes with his lovely son, Draco.
Yeah.
Malfoy.
It's always really fun. The Borgin Burkes scene is fantastic, and it has so many things that pay off, which I'm sure you've written. Like, it's amazing how much she builds from just that one chapter. It's amazing. Like, it pays off. Like, I feel like Borgin pays off a little bit in that he's a shop owner, and like, what is he actually curious about? Is he actually like a dark wizard? It doesn't seem clear to me that he is. He certainly has dark objects in his care. But when he says that line about like wizard blood seems to be counting for less and less everywhere or whatever nowadays, and Lucius is like, not with me, and he's like, no sir, nor not with me either. But then like once the Malfoys leave, under his breath he's just like, all right, Mr. Malfoy. Like,
yeah, I mean, it makes me think of like in the Star Wars the most recent trilogy with like the commentary on like people making money off of like hatred and war and all of that sort of thing. So maybe he just we don't know much about him, but it seems like, yeah, he is definitely this mystery of like, where do you stand? And we see like a glimpse from Harry's perspective, who is hiding in a cabinet, of what like all of that dialogue is really, to me, very important. So we're being introduced, like we've heard a little bit about the Malfoy family, a little bit about Draco's dad, and now we see him and we have this like interaction, and we're seeing kind of the tone of like who he is, how Draco is. And
I know, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a great device that J.K. Rowling uses to put Harry eavesdropping, because obviously Lucius and Draco interact with each other slightly different when they know Harry is there, or when they know other people are watching him, as does Borgin, right? Yeah. That and the Hand of Glory. I saw you had some notes on that one.
Yeah, so I have some things with Wizards Unite. So, the Hand of Glory. So this was interesting. The quote on page 52, because Draco kind of looks at it, and Borgin comes over and he's like, the Hand of Glory. Insert a candle and it gives light only to the holder. Best friend of thieves and plunderers. And then that leads into like this side conversation where Lucius is talking about like,
grades and Hermione.
Yeah. And he's like, you should be ashamed that a muggle born is beating.
That's
so like
the run up to
you get a little bit of what this book is kind of like going to explore more in depth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because did you notice that Hagrid at some point says something about like, I think it was Hagrid. Yeah, it is, right? Something about like, it's in their blood, and he's talking about Malfoy. I wrote that down too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's basically like, you don't need to. Yeah. So that's like later on in the chapter. Bad blood. That's what it is like how he.
Well, that's so
it.
interesting, because we've talked about this in real life in many different facets of like how the judgment, how easily people judge others by association. So like, it's not that different from like a blood judgment of being like, well, okay, one of your parents or both your parents are muggles, so I judge you based on that. Or like one of your parents is a Death Eater, so I'll judge you based on that. It's really interesting. They clearly have distinctly different outcomes usually, but they're used in similar logic, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I put that quote down, because I mean, we'll see more of that also with like the blood status. We saw a little bit
blood very close together, and even in their how they read. It's kind of interesting.
So the Hand of Glory is a real thing.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So it's a dried and pickled hand well, from Wikipedia, it says of a male person, I think it's of any person, who has been hanged, and it's often the left hand, but if the person was hanged for murder, it's the hand that did it. So it's like, this is like a real thing that I found. So the etymology is, I forgot the term for it, but it's basically hand of glory as a phrase is something that over time it evolved. So it used to be called something different, but then like the name that got taken up was like a simplification or like an easier to remember phrasing of it. Because there's this like French phrase, man de gloire, and it's like a mispronunciation of a similar word, which actually means mandrake. Mandrakes are also a real thing, so we can talk about that later. But I'm like looking at this article and I'm just like, wait, what? So there's this excerpt of How to Make a Hand of Glory that was written in 1722 by Griot de Givry. I definitely butchered that, but take the right or left hand of a felon who is hanging from a gibbet, which is like a guillotine.
Giblet? Yeah.
Giblet. Gibbet? No, it says gibbet. No, not giblet.
Cool. That's like a thing in Turkey? Okay, cool.
Guillotine or other execution structure. Beside a highway, which probably doesn't mean highway in contemporary terms if it was written in 1722. Wrap it in part of a funeral pall, and so wrapped, squeeze it well, and then put it into an earthenware vessel with zimat niter, which is like potassium nitrate or sodium nitrate, salt, and long peppers, the whole well powdered. This is the whole process, okay? Leave it in this vessel for a fortnight, and then take it out and expose it to full sunlight during the dog days until it becomes quite dry. If the sun is not strong enough, put it in an oven with fern and vervain, which also, vervain is actually used for like medicinal purposes, although what I was reading, there's not really many scientific studies of the effectiveness of it, but still, it's something that we use as an ingredient in Wizards Unite. Next, make a candle from the fat of the felon. So you use the fat of the person who you executed.
Sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. Virgin wax, sesame, and pony, which when I was trying to look up like what that meant, people speculated it meant horse dung, but it's unclear what that is. And use the hand of glory as a candlestick to hold this candle when lighted, and then those in every place into which you go with this baneful instrument shall remain motionless. So you have the whole process where you have the hand, you sever the hand, and like you dry it out or pickle it and whatever, and then you put a candle in it. So it's like this thing. And it's meant
to have like a magical effect.
Yeah. So you're not people like if people, I don't know. It's supposed to. It's meant to freeze people. Like it's supposed to be this thing that kind of like, I don't know. It was wild when I read this. And I was like, this is a real thing. Apparently.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. That's
so don't be a murderer. You'll have the hand of glory made from you and your fat. Yeah, so that's one thing we see in Borgin Burkes. And then we also see a cursed opal necklace, although it's not labeled that way. It's Draco sees a little sign that's like, caution, do not touch cursed.
It says opal necklace.
Yeah, but it's not called like cursed opal necklace. There's not like a sign that says cursed opal necklace. But yeah, we'll see that come back in a later book. And then we see Hagrid, who is in Knockturn Alley because he's trying to find flesh-eating slug repellent because they are he says they're ruining the school cabbages. And flesh-eating slugs, when I was looking it up in the registry, it's returned to the Hogwarts cabbage patch. Yeah. So that was like a cute little reference.
Plus, I was reading next to you, and we were, although we don't talk much about the chapters before our podcast to keep it fresh, I did ask if that was the vanishing cabinet that Harry was hiding in. Unclear. We didn't do deep research, but probably,
unless there's another cabinet,
big black one.
That
I didn't
would be
look at what I didn't compare it to like a description in the later books, but yeah, I would think so. I mean, we know that it's there, but yeah, interesting. Wow, I know. Well, it makes some sense Harry is in a place of curiosities, and like all of these things then like are interesting, and so she was able to bring them back in interesting ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And to have Draco there and watch it all play out through Draco too. Like he is so studious in an interesting way, because this is years later he gets the payoff. Who knows if he goes back to Borgin Burkes after that, but you know, all these items that he's looking at and he's like, oh, that's interesting. Like he does have a curiosity. He's walking around the shop looking at it. That's what I would do. Yeah, and you know, take me a couple feet away from my father, who appears to hate me.
Fun. Yeah. What I really liked in this chapter afterwards, so everyone meets up with each other, and then there's this situation that happens in,
Gringotts?
No, Flourish and Blotts.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you want to talk about Gringotts?
Well, no, it's okay. I mean, it's another good insight into Harry. Yeah, and just his sensitivity and empathy. And it's a connected empathy. I mean, he knows what it's like to not have any money. He grew up with no money. So
the Weasleys, because this came up, I mean, this is basically Ron's story, is like we're talking about like, my family doesn't have much. We saw that a little bit in the Burrow with him apologizing for it. We heard comments in the Burrow as they're looking at the book list saying like, oh, it's going to be expensive. And that
was one of my favorite quotes though. Yeah.
Which one?
Sorry. that Harry hadn't mentioned his gold to the Dursleys because he felt that the Dursleys' hatred of wizarding things wouldn't have extended to a pile of gold.
Yeah. Mine. Yeah, so we have all of that context, and we also know like that's part of like the Weasley family, like people like, so Draco makes fun of Ron for being poor, like that's part of it. And then Harry meets Lockhart. Lockhart causes this big commotion, and you're like, dude, who is this dude? And it's also funny. They're like, the description is like, all the people or most of the people that were in line were people who were Molly's age, just like, you know, which is being obsessed with him. It's just really funny. And then Lockhart's like, here, Harry, take all of these books. And then Harry immediately dumps it into Ginny's cauldron. He's like, here, you take it.
Yeah. I loved even the subtlety of that moment of like Harry puts books into Ginny's cauldron. So Ginny isn't even familiar with all of the books that are in her cauldron. And then that pays off so hard because Lucius also goes into her cauldron. Yeah. It's just so great. I don't know. How do you do that stuff?
Well,
so
before
quickly?
Lucius does that, so we have Draco, and he is doing his classic Draco where he's antagonizing. And we've seen this in book 1, and it's like, it's fine for a second. They're just exchanging words, and then Ron lunges at him. Classic Ron. Then what I love is the parallel with the parents, because then you have Lucius being antagonistic, and then Arthur's just like lunging, and I'm just like, oh my God, I love this. I love how that is. I mean, you see it because I think it speaks to this generational thing, this blood thing, or like this connectedness, this association, and you have the same exchange. And that's when Hagrid breaks it up and is talking about
bullies be
bad
bullying.
blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so much that happens in this chapter. It's relatively long. I mean,
yeah, it is longer than
3 different locations of note. Yeah.
Oh, and then during that confrontation, one of my favorite quotes that I wrote down is Arthur saying, "We have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of Wizard Malfoy."
Yes.
Which, again, hints at this larger dynamic that is in the wizarding world, that is what we find out later to be part of the fabric of the wizarding world and how people interact with each other.
Yeah.
This idea.
Well, what's so amazing about that exchange is that they legitimately, it is literally totally true. It's amazing. Like to have it spoken, and like it doesn't even affect Lucius. It doesn't. in the way that Arthur would maybe have intended it, right? Or like Lucius is just, I think he comes back and he's like clearly like, basically like if you were such a wizarding, I think he says blood trader, I'm not sure, or whatever, wizarding sellout, like at least they could pay you better or whatever. Like they just go back and forth in that way. And they really do not see eye to eye. There's no common ground there in like how they view how to be. Yeah.
But it speaks to a larger dynamic, a larger source of conflict, not just like within the wizarding world, but just in general between humans. People have different perspective on what is disgraceful or what that means, like different senses of morality or ethics or anything like that. Like what is it that we should stand for, or what is it that should like govern the way that we exist and see each other and interact. And they are totally different. And I think it's meant to be such a stark contrast.
Yep. It's, and to pit, it's a really great way of expanding our and Harry's world even further, to recognize that like the sort of petty school type things aren't just that they are like circling, they have long histories. And Mr. Weasley was probably bullied as a kid in Hogwarts
for sure.
by Lucius. I don't know, Lucius might be older, I'm not sure, but yeah, totally.
Or Arthur might be older, because I was thinking about that last chapter of, so like because you brought up like if the Potters were still alive, like what kind of house would they have?
Yeah, and what would Harry be like?
Yeah, and what I was thinking of is like, oh, like who would the wizard parents, like whose wizard parents would Lily and James hang out with? And I think Arthur and Molly are probably a little old for them, because I was like, oh, well, they didn't go to Hogwarts at the same time, because I mean Charlie, Bill, like they have kids, which I mean assuming that everyone's on a similar timeline for having their first kid, like they seem much older in terms of not necessarily being
maybe
there
the
at the same time.
Weasleys' parents are, because I know they married young.
Although I guess I could try to look up and see if there are any.
Maybe the same age as like
dates.
Tonks's parents. Andromeda, and so like Bellatrix. Well, that would make, but it's hard to say whether Narcissa and Lucius are similar ages. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can look at it.
Yeah,
I'm sure people are right now.
Yeah,
yes.
Let us know how old are these characters.
Yeah. Cool. You have something else?
No, I think we talked about all the quotes, everything. Oh, the other quote that I wrote was earlier, and like when they first, Harry's first eavesdropping and sees the Malfoys, and Draco is talking about the broom and like, well, it doesn't matter because, Harry got this kind of broom and blah, blah, blah. And Lucius is like, you have told me this at least a dozen times already.
Yeah, their dynamic is.
And the line after that, though, that I really liked, that I think speaks to him as his character, is, and I would remind you that it is not prudent to appear less fond of Harry Potter. Not when most of our kind regard him as the hero who made the Dark Lord disappear, because that really is, like, the Malfoys are similar to the Dursleys in they care about the appearance. So, like, what is it that people see you as? And so, I mean, they definitely want to maintain their like power and like status, but also it seems to be careful. Like, it's not, it seems to me like this is like, it wouldn't be wise to do this because it might like close off other like possibilities or opportunities to take advantage of, is how I was reading.
It's amazing how both of those families are affected by their caring about their own reputation.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Weasleys, because Percy follows that, right? He cares about the reputation and he rejects it in some way, being a Weasley. But the reason he rejects it is because, Molly and Arthur, maybe they stand for different things. We're just going to circle back on what Arthur said, right? Yeah. That like he doesn't care about his reputation in those same ways, like and what his family stands for and what they're known for. It's not going to be money. He doesn't care about money. Like he will worry about money, but he's not in active pursuit of more money.
Yeah.
So long as his family is able to love each other, right, and be comfortable with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, because you've mentioned before that the immediate reaction with Harry and Draco, that Harry can recognize a bully because he's lived with Dudley. So I wonder if there's also this other like sense that's coming out of just observing the Malfoy family and being like, yeah, y'all aren't that great.
No.
I can see. I've lived with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, good. Awesome. Cool.
Yay. Did you have anything else?
No, I don't think so, no. Oh, I was going to just mention Ginny.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about Ginny.
She sticks up for Harry. I love that.
She dumps her elbow in butter.
Yes, she does.
Drops her porridge.
I love that image. Yeah, I'm like, people do that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, but no, she speaks back to
Draco.
Yeah. And you're just like,
it's really funny in that moment. It's such a, like, it's obvious. It's almost caricaturesque that it has this huge crush on Harry, than to actually have it like manifest and like in a different way other than her just being shy around him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All in one chapter. But okay, so I think the next chapter is also a foundable.
Oh.
The Whomping Willow.
Oh, yeah.
Until then, Wand's ready.